So the last thing we're going to cover is application layer encryption. And I want to point out, since we're not covering data safe, we talked about it a little bit earlier, it's part of advanced WAF. Data safe was literally ripped out everything that we're going to look at here. So everything you learn here, it's exactly what data safe looks like, except for the fact that it doesn't come from the fraud menu, it comes from the data protection menu on the left navigation bar of the configuration utility. But other than that, you set up a URL, you configure the URL just like you've been doing. So everything we're going to cover. But I have a question for you. So we talked about all these threats, losing data, losing credentials to the drop zone and so forth. And we have HTTPS. Great encryption on our HTTPS. My question is, do you suppose that HTTPS is going to help these victims from losing their credentials to the hacker because of malware? Joe says no, kind of a no. Well, let's look at a graphic here to discuss that. So there's our network stack. Here's my malware. What OSI layer do you suppose malware runs in?
Layer 8.
It's not layer 8, no. The user who installed it is in layer 8, but the malware itself runs in layer 7 because it's malicious software. So malware runs in layer 7. What layer does encryption take place? SSL encryption. I'm always surprised. We're like, I don't know, 4 or 5. It takes place in layer 6. So the user is seeing their username and password, and they're entering their username and password, and that's all taking place in layer 7. Malware runs. Malware is grabbing their data in layer 7, and malware steals their data from layer 7. For the user, that information now goes down the network stack in the correct application, which is then encrypted and sent out. But malware has already stolen the data before it's been encrypted by SSL encryption. So here's another graphic to show kind of how this works. So we start off by getting the malware on the victim. The victim goes to their site using SSL, always using SSL. Everything uses SSL now, especially all of our banks. Malware runs. The user starts filling in their information, username, password. We've already seen this graphic. I'm just pointing it out. But what I do want to point out, and you'll do this in your exercise as well, is that at this point, if you go to your inspection tools that you've been playing with, and you run these kind of commands, you can see that the username and password are visible. Even though I'm looking at the ... I can see the password. And if I can see it, malware can see it. Then the user logs in. Their encrypted information goes to the server as is expected, but unfortunately, as we've already talked about, their credentials not only go to the drop zone, but in clear text. So that's how it works. What are we going to do about it? This is my favorite WebSafe feature. So I'm thrilled that it's becoming part of ASM as well. And the reason it's my favorite WebSafe feature is because all the other features we talked about were detection, detection, detection. Well, gosh, can't you help me out a little bit other than just detecting things? And application layer encryption does. But to really understand what this feature is, just think about what it's called. It's application layer encryption. It's layer 7 encryption. It's encryption at the layer 7 level before SSL encryption. That sounds pretty good. A lot of things this does, and we'll look at some slides for this. It protects against keyboard logging programs. Now, I don't have a good slide for this, but I think it's important to show this. So there's a feature that you can enable, and you guys, I think, will play with this feature, where what WebSafe does is when a user enters their password, it substitutes values so that when we go to this screen here and I'm viewing this, it actually substitute values. So for example, for that password up on the board, up on the screen, what it would look like is capital A, @ symbol, small a, small a, small a, 1. Sorry, I've got to remember this. Small a, small a. Forgive me if I get this wrong, but it's something like that. It creates this sort of masked value of the real password so that even if the hacker does get the user's password, that's what they're going to get. And more importantly, if they then try to use that password, we get an alert that says somebody's trying to use a stolen password, a stolen substituted password. Protects those input fields like username, password, credit card number, anything where I'm filling information in and I don't want the hacker to be able to steal it. Some malware is so sophisticated that it can actually capture passwords as they're typed. As they're typed. So even application layer encryption has a limitation that it encrypts it after it's been typed. So some malware programs already have it at that point. So we have another feature that enables us to do real-time encryption. So as the password is typed, it's starting to become encrypted. Pretty heavy-duty stuff here. And this might be one of my favorite features of any of our F5 products. Obfuscating HTML code, and we'll take a look at that in a few more slides. But let's take a look at what application layer encryption does. So you notice on Hackathon here, I've already logged in, and I'm looking at my inspection tools. So I've already clicked on the submit button, and I can now look at the parameters that were submitted. So this is the post-submit information that I'm seeing. And even after submitting, I can still see what the username and password are in clear text. That's not good. Again, if I can see it, malware can see it. So this is without application layer encryption. This is with application layer encryption. So now, after the user submits their information, application layer encryption encrypts it so that if the hacker gets it, that's what they get. That's what they can see. I can encrypt any of my input fields. So now I've also encrypted the username field as well. Remembering that I still cannot stop this data from being sent to the drop zone. What I can do is ensure that what is sent to the drop zone is useless for the hacker. They can't do anything with that. Ready for another animation? Wake you up animation? So, keyboard logging. A keyboard logging program, if it's running on my computer, let's iterate a browser-based keyboard logging program. What happens is everything the user's typing now, from their username, and then they're going to hit the tab key, and then their password, everything's being captured inside this keyboard logging program, and then hackers can access that and view all this information. Not good. So that's without our protection. With the key logging protection, and key logging protection is only available for password type fields. Password type fields where we just get the little dots when they're typed in. So the user's already typing their first name, they've hit the tab key, and they begin typing their password. And what happens in the keyboard log is WebSafe just floods the log file with gibberish characters. Tons and tons of gibberish characters, so that when a hacker looks at this, and by the way, of course, in their file, all the real letters aren't read. I just put them there so you could see that the real password is going in there. they're just going to get all this gibberish that to them, there's nothing they can do with that. So that's one other level of protection. Then I also mentioned there's another issue. Some malware can capture passwords as they're typed. So let's watch how this works. So malware is running. The user starts typing in their password. And for every character, the malware is now capturing that. Boom. It's getting every single keyboard character. And once they're done, right as they're clicking on submit, before it goes to layer 6, their actual password is encrypted. Application layer encryption. Great. That's what the hacker's going to get. But unfortunately, the malware has also captured that and has sent it. So that's not good. We got to fix that. And we can do that with our real-time encryption. So this is a quick example, and you're not going to see much without real-time encryption. If I were to go and look at the code of my web page, and I look at that password field, and I start typing a password, nothing's happening because the password's just being captured in that form field. And if the malware's capturing it, oh, too bad. But now we're going to add our real-time encryption. And here's what happens with our real-time encryption. As I start typing, that password is being instantly encrypted. And notice with every keyboard character I'm typing in, it continues to add to the encryption so that any point they capture this, that's what they get. Now this is cool stuff. We're covering every possible scenario of data loss here. Now my favorite, field obfuscation and HTML form work. It's cool stuff here. So how do hackers create malware against my site? I talked about this a little bit earlier. They just look at my site. They go to my website, they look at the code, and they can see all aspects of my website. The forms, how many forms are on the login page, you know, what forms they are they form 0, form 1. They see all the information like input names. There's the name of my parameters. The more of this information that's visible to the hacker, the easier it is for him to create, or her, to create malware against my page. So that's not good to have all that visible information. So we have an option of adding what is called field obfuscation, which makes my form fields look like that. That's the name of my first input field. And what's even better is not only does it obfuscate the names of these fields, but if you watch here, you'll see that in real time, it actually changes the name of each of these obfuscated form fields every second. So for the hacker trying to do something with these fields, it's next to impossible to manipulate them in some manner. They don't know what the name is. And then we have another problem. Okay, so fine, I've got obfuscated fields now. That's good. But the hacker still has some valuable information here. They can see where the form starts. They can see where the form ends. They can see all of the inputs themselves. They can see that there's an input type text, another input type password, and then an input type submit. Still, that gives them some tools to create malware. So what we're going to do is add what's called the decoy inputs, which look like that. Let's do it. Here we are. It adds all this stuff, and watch what's happening. It is dynamically adding and removing these decoy inputs every second in the page. And the hacker literally cannot do anything with that. They cannot design a malware to manipulate that. And this adds virtually nothing on the client side. The user sitting there, they won't even know this is happening unless they go view the source of the page using like the Chrome inspection tools. So we have now protected our input fields from being stolen. We've protected our web page and our forms from being manipulated by malware. We've added true protection now along with all of our detection and alerting. And again, everything we've just looked at, this is all part of DataSafe. So now you can either sell, it's up to your sales, you could either sell advanced WAF and they can add this to their pages with advanced WAF, or you can still sell WebSafe with application layer encryption. I'm not really sure how you target those sales because this has just come out and I haven't really heard a lot of the sales strategies aspects of it, but neither one of these products are going away. So WebSafe's not going away and neither is application layer encryption. So finally, how do I add this? Well, it could not be any easier. Again, we've already got our login PHP protection, so we just go back to the URL, go into the URL, go to our application layer encryption. It's disabled right now. I will enable it. And once again, most of the features that we're going to want are already enabled. Many of them are. Many. Field obfuscation, keylogger protection. Decoy inputs is not enabled by default, so let's enable it. It's pretty simple to do. Now this is the first of these features we've talked about, malware detection, phishing detection. This is the first one that actually does require 2 steps. This is the first step, but in order to do things like field obfuscation or field encryption, we have to specify what the fields are. What are the parameters we want to protect? So this is the first step, and then the second step is configuring the parameters. You already did this a little bit earlier with the username parameter. You created a username parameter and had it sent in the alerts. Same idea. We're going to go up to our parameters. We'll add 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 parameters here, as many as you want. I'm adding a password parameter. Over on the right side of this page is where we have our application layer encryption options. Encrypt is what encrypts the data, either in real time or right after it's submitted. Substitute values is what does this. And then obfuscation is what hides the name of the field on the web page. So I could add my username parameter, I could add my credit card parameter, whatever parameters are vulnerable to things like data loss and so forth. Just put them in there. And again, this is so easy compared to how this is done in our competitors' products, what they have to go through to get some of these same features. 3 checkboxes and I'm done. Yes, sir.
I know that we use asymmetric cryptography to protect. So we will have private key and public key. So the question is, every time we connect, we will generate different public key for each user or the same?
So WebSafe regenerates keys regularly. And so when you say every time we connect, you mean like a user connects? I don't think every time, but I know that WebSafe does regenerate keys on a regular basis so that they cannot be discovered. Sorry, long day, I'm losing my train of thought. But not for every connection that a user has.
So maybe he might connect and you connect with you, maybe the same key or not?
You mean if you connect and I connect? Yeah. I don't have an answer to that, I'm sorry. You have to ask the hardest question at the end of the day. But that being said, are there any other questions? This is it for WebSafe, other than your last exercise.
So with customers that have Best with no add-ons, they're getting some not getting anything.
No, in fact, so WebSafe is not part of any of our bundles. It is a separate purchase,
Okay.
separate license file that they have to acquire.
And you said that WebSafe as a name is continuing on discrete from DataSafe?
I have not heard anything about this product being end of life. I can't imagine it would be. All they wanted, because the malware and phishing is still very popular and it's being used a lot, especially in Europe and EMEA. So I mean, they're not going to take it away.
So, moving forward, everything we talked about in here is WebSafe. And that name will continue to exist, not the product, but the name will continue to exist. And it's being joined by DataSafe.
It's not being joined by DataSafe. DataSafe is an ASM feature.
Okay, what's that?
It's the application layer encryption aspect of WebSafe utilized within the ASM feature set.
Okay, so a best customer.
I don't know because I don't think best customers get advanced WAF.
No, so not just regular old WAF. Are we given any?
No DataSafe.
Okay,
So DataSafe is an add-on or it comes with the advanced WAF license.
okay. And
You're like going so close to the edge of my knowledge of sales.
and then WebSafe is not something you can buy. It's just a category, a dotted line.
It's something you can buy. Yes, you do buy it. As I was telling Kyung, this is a product that I have been advised that SEs, I chose to add this to our curriculum because I think it's an important product to be able to go out and talk about, but you're rarely going to go out to, mom and pop business and say, hey, I want to sell you WebSafe because it's an expensive product. So we're talking major deals, major corporations like banks, and you're usually advised to bring along a product SME to help work with this type of a sale.
There's probably going to be a training alone on how to sell, on what the SKUs are.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty
God.
Have you been keeping up?
So how about the website license?
The what?
The website license is permanent or per user?
It is permanent. In fact, it's. I don't know why they haven't incorporated it into our licensing database, our licensing system. So it's very risky when you're asking for WebSafe POC licenses because they don't expire. And if you forgot about it at a customer, it could just sit there and they have WebSafe now for free. All right, so as I said, you guys now have your time. I encourage you to finish this. This is great exercise. It's great to see what you can see in this exercise.